Hello, my name is Hannah Lupe. I'm the managing editor for Young Adulting Review, an online review magazine for kids and teen books. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Clara Kumagai. Clara is from Canada, Japan, and Ireland and writes both fiction and nonfiction for children and adults. She has been published in The Stinging Fly, The Irish Times, Banshee, Room, the Kyoto Journal, and Cicada, among others. She is a recipient of a We Need Diverse Books mentorship and was a finalist for the 2020 Jim Wong-Chu Emerging Writers Award. Catfish Rolling is her debut novel. Thank you so much, Clara, for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so first, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to publishing?
Hmm. Yeah, so I guess you read in my bio, I'm apparently from three countries, but I was born here in Vancouver, and my dad is Japanese, my mother's Irish. So when I was like 5 years old, my family and I moved to Ireland, and I mostly grew up there. And then I came to Vancouver to do the MFA in creative writing, and I did that. I lived in Japan for 5 years after that, and I just moved back to Ireland in March.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a lot of bouncing around between different places.
Mhm.
And then in terms of writing, I guess it's kind of typical for writers to be, making up little stories when they're kids. Reading a lot. I always include that in terms of like a writing journey. I think that's super important.
Mm.
And when I was in my undergrad, I studied drama studies and English, and I started playwriting then. So that's really my first, I guess, like I don't want to say like real writing, but maybe more structured
Mm.
writing, and ones that led to performances or so on. Um, I think something that was really formative was that I was reviewing a lot of theater and also reviewing a lot of kids' books.
Mhm.
And I think that leads into doing the MFA when I was doing so much workshopping.
Yeah.
I think those are really important for your own writing, but also it just teaches you a lot about story in general, reading like a wide variety of other people's writing, finding community, I think was really important.
Mhm.
And I focused on fiction and writing for kids in YA, but I also like to classes in creative nonfiction and playwriting. And I think like practicing or just like even trying out different genres
Yeah.
is a really good thing. I mean, at least for me, it was really good. So I was submitting to lots of lit mags. There's lots of great ones in Vancouver, even, of course, across Canada and in Ireland as well.
Mhm.
And then I was working on Catfish Rolling from like the last year of
Mhm.
my MFA. It wasn't actually my thesis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started it here. And then when I was in Japan, part of the reason I went to Japan was because I thought it would be important and like beneficial when I was writing a book mostly set in Japan.
Mhm.
And then I mean, it took years. People are always ask how long it take, and I say it took ages.
Yeah.
So I started in 2016, and it was published this year in 2023. So that journey, I mean, for some people it's longer. Some lucky people have a shorter,
Yeah.
faster time with it. But for me, that's how long, I guess that's how long it had to take.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, everything kind of informs writing. It's amazing.
Mhm.
So speaking of Catfish Rolling, it is a YA novel with elements of magic realism. And I personally love this genre for the way it infuses magic into the everyday, and find it mirrors the way books kind of make reality a little more fun and a little more magical. So my question was, I was wondering how writing impacts the way you experience the world.
I think I'm probably similar to lots of writers in terms of like observation, in terms of storing interesting little anecdotes or facts away in my brain. Um, and just, I guess, paying attention to those little pieces of stories
Mhm.
that, grab me, or even hearing like good sentences
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people say. And I guess that would be one thing, but I guess in specifics to magical realism, I grew up with like a lot of Irish legends and folklore, and that probably like colored a lot of seeing the world or wanting to see magic or strangeness in the world. And then with Japanese folklore as well, that would be similar. And in Japan, there's lots of stories, like folklore stories of yokai, which are like spirits or tricksters. And I think those are similar to Irish stories in that sometimes it's hardly a story, it's like a snippet of a narrative or a really short anecdote, like lots of fairy tales are. Yeah, I feel like even these are less than or shorter than fairy tales. It's like things my grandmother would say in passing,
Yeah.
like, oh, that's a, I don't know, fairy tree over there. It's not
Mm.
even a story. It's just, I guess, a fact for some
Yeah.
people. It's just kind of woven through.
Mhm.
So I think Japan can be similar like that as well. And when you have those kinds of figures or narratives that are just incorporated into daily life, I think it makes it quite easy to write something like magical realism or fantasy as well. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I love folklore and fairy tales. I do most of my research on that, and I always think it's so interesting how you can find similar tales across cultures across the world. How there's just kind of a thread there that's always very similar. It's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. And you find the same narratives or even like very similar stories in different places. And there's a few between Japan and Ireland that are almost exactly the same, but there's a few details changed. It's
Yeah.
like over the sea instead of across the sea, or it's a
Mm.
turtle instead of a horse or something.
Yeah.
But really very, very similar narratives in some cases.
Yeah, it's so cool. So in Catfish Rolling, Sora finds herself in quite a few liminal spaces throughout the novel, whether that space be the fluctuating time zones caused by the catfish or the space between high school and university, which is very much a liminal space. Um, what attracts you to these liminal spaces, and what do you hope readers take away from Sora's character?
Well, I think you made a good point, even just talking about the space between high school and university, because Sora in the story isn't going straight into university. She's ostensibly taking a year out, but she doesn't really know what she's going to do within that year. And I think that is a big liminal space because it's supposed to be this time between, being a teenager and then becoming an adult or becoming independent. And I guess I wanted to put her in that place because I wanted this like stage of like uncertainty or trying to figure things out. And I guess practic in terms of practicality with the plot, I didn't want other things to intrude.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, oh, it didn't feel right for this story to have her going to classes in between. Like,
Mm.
it was more important that she felt sort of unmoored.
Mhm.
And I guess unmoored in time, right, which is a big theme. And I guess, well, a lot of teenage years are sort of liminal anyway.
Yeah.
And for Soda, because she's multiracial, right? She's Japanese and Canadian. It also, I feel like, fits in with feeling like identity is a liminal space as well, or that you're moving through it differently at different times.
Mm.
Um, you're not seen as one thing or the other. And I guess another point with that is something like loss or dealing with loss can feel liminal in terms of just being caught between past and present or not being fully present sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you. um, so our next question is, if you could pick a book that has influenced you most in your writing career, what would it be and why?
This is such a tough one, and it's so hard to pick one.
Mm.
I can't give you one, so I'm just going to give you a few. It's hard to
Yeah.
boil something down to one story, but honestly, something that it was really and still is really important to me is Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. And it's the first picture book I really remember uh, loving as a small child. And my mother thought it would be too scary for me, which I think is pretty common for parents with that book. She thought the wild things would be too frightening, but I demanded it be read like over and over
Demand.
again. And I think that was really important for me with finding a story you love as a kid. But I do love picture books still. So I studied that picture book more when I was grown, and I learned a lot about like structure,
Mm,
narrative, and even like the sentences in it aren't really grammatical. They're not really grammatically correct, and it's a bit odd in these different small ways.
mhm.
And so that would be a big one. And then I guess as a teenager, uh, probably Philip Pullman's Dark Materials
Yeah.
was super influential because it was really different from other fantasy that I was
Mhm.
reading at the time. The writing in it is still lovely. The
Mhm.
imagination, I think, is really unique compared to other things that were around at the time. And I'll can I give a third one? It's
Yeah,
hard now. I just have all these different
yeah.
ones that are kind of fighting for attention.
Please, yeah.
Um, I guess I don't know if it is a book, but I don't know. I guess I would just say like almost collections of folklore, like the Grimm fairy tales, even Angela Carter's Bloody Chamber. More recently, there's Legends of Tono, which is Japanese folklore collected, and yeah, those are kind of all. I can't say they're one book, but they're in the same
Yeah.
category.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have so much to say about all of those things. Those are like all my faves too. I also think it's interesting how like I've been reading more picture books since
Mm,
my master's. Um, a lot of picture books are so poetic, they're so
mhm,
beautiful, and then they get across meaning so succinctly, but so lovely. And Where the Wild Things Are is quite magical, realist too. Like it's this, yeah, boy being angry and then the wild things have a rumpus. It's so fun. Yeah, and I love Angela Carter too. She's my favorite. The
I
Bloody
love
Chamber.
Angela Carter. I just thought of another book. Sorry.
Okay, yeah,
As
yeah.
Angela Carter, I also thought of Yoko Ogawa.
Oh,
She wrote Revenge. She also wrote The Memory Police, more, which was translated more recently,
mm,
and that got a National Book Award or something. But Revenge, I feel like, is overlooked of hers, and it has these interesting. I feel like similarities or tonal or thematic similarities with Bloody Chamber. They're these 10 interlocking kind of short stories,
mm.
very uncanny, strange, eerie. They're brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna write
I'll
that.
stop now.
No,
I could
it's
just
good
keep
for
listing
me.
books.
I'm getting book recommendations. It's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to our final question. We ask this question to everyone who does Zoom with us. It's kind of a fun one.
Yeah.
So, do you have any writing rituals, like writing in the morning or evening,
Mm.
listening to music, lighting a candle, that sort of thing?
I would say coffee is important, or tea, probably coffee more.
Mm.
I Now I have a nice writing space, which I'm very happy to have. I have a cat. So part of the ritual would be me sitting down with my laptop and my coffee, and then my cat has to get involved in some way, like lie on my keyboard, or like everything has to be shuffled to one side so that she can be accommodated on the
Yeah.
desk. That would be one ritual now. I would often write in the morning before breakfast, like
Mm.
an hour of writing before breakfast, which I found works really well because I'm hungry and it
Yeah.
adds a sense of urgency.
Mhm.
Uh, that would be my normal routine, but I do find when I get close to finishing a draft, it's sort of all in, and I found it really useful and lucky to be able to do this would be to do a writing retreat or even, find a friend who's out of town and go to their place. And then it's just really full on for me
Mm.
to push to get something finished, like a draft done. And that's kind of fun because it's so intense.
Yeah.
And you come out the other side like not knowing what happened. So that would be for me, but that would really be the end of a draft. I couldn't do that to
Mhm.
start off with, or couldn't really do it in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the final race to
Yes,
finish.
exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've done that for quite a few drafts, different things. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for chatting with us here today. Been such a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm really happy to like contribute because when I was in the MFA, we didn't have young adulting, and I think I think it's great. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.